on essays of Gita.
We can do that also.
No, and discuss. I mean, we tend to just be, sorry, my lighting is horrible. It would just be nice to have some discussion on the actual chapter, but whatever everybody would like.
We can do that also, yes.
Wow, thunder out here.
Yeah, we can do both. I do not know how we will, how it can be done nicely, truly speaking. Shall we read through, or it's also possible the exercise of reading through sometimes is very pleasant and without any, we can read passage by passage, one by one. What is your idea, Radhe, since you suggest this?
Well, I think the group just wants to get into essays of the Gita, and
So what do you
I would
suggest?
suggest we just try, reading one paragraph, chapter 8,
Okay.
one paragraph or two at a time, and discuss. See if there's any questions. I don't know. We can put it out to the group, but somehow these chapters are packed, and we're not necessarily getting into some of the details. So it would be nice to have a discussion around it.
Sure. Actually, I selected passages which I wanted to concentrate on.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and just to explain them in accordance with the text from the Gita, that's what I thought will be the work. And then if we have another format, reading through, I'm very, very much for it, because the text is really charged with meaning and presence. And if we read it slow, without any hurry, we will gather a lot of knowledge, if you want to, of course. But it means it's like a study group. Yeah, we are kind of slowly flowing through through the ocean of knowledge, truly speaking, because what Sri Aurobindo gives there is much more than we can perceive immediately. And he's very sharp also. So anyhow, just do not know what to do. So please.
Well, let's just start with what you've prepared here, Vladimir.
All right. I actually went into the chapter with Vedanta because Sankhya and Yoga have to be resolved, yes, in Vedanta. We already came to that resolution somewhere closer. And Sri Krishna never deals with Sankhya separately from Yoga or with Yoga separately from Sankhya. And we will have to look into that. But let me start with mantra first. Om Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yatkarpatamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam. Here, if we look into this dilemma of Sankhya and Yoga, and we have to see this dilemma. The whole object of the first 6 chapters of the Gita, says Sri Aurobindo, is to synthesize a large frame of Vedantic truth, the two methods, ordinarily supposed to be diverse and even opposite, of the Sankhyas and Yogins. Now, we read already in the second chapter that for Sri Krishna, yoga is yoga and Sankhya is kind of philosophy. Yes? renunciation of works, so to say, for the sake of Sankhya. Sankhya, you know what it means. Sankhya is actually, what we call it, enumeration. Yes, when we take the irreducible, we find irreducible elements, tattvas. It's a philosophical approach. And knowing that, we kind of gather knowledge enough to break to our unborn self. And as Sri Krishna says, and Sri Aurobindo emphasizes all the time, that by both you can arrive at liberation, by Sankhya and by Yoga. And then he does something interesting. He tries to combine them he sees it in that way. So,
Vladimir, I have a quick question. Sorry,
right.
I don't mean to be difficult today. So you said it's a link to the unborn self. Is it the unborn or the born? The soul?
Unborn.
The unborn.
No,
It's the
it's
unborn.
only,
The
yes.
Sankhya Purusha is the unborn.
The same in yoga. The target is unborn self, not born.
Okay.
And this is quite interesting. They want to find the witness Purusha. They want to separate Purusha from Prakriti, both of them. And this is the beginning of the Gita. Yeah, it's not the Bhakti Yoga section and not Jnana Yoga yet. So we are dealing with this first entry, and that's what Sri Aurobindo explains here, that entry is important to see. So the Sankhya is taken as the starting point and the basis, but it is from the beginning and with a progressively increasing emphasis permeated with the ideas and methods of yoga and remolded in its spirit. This is something interesting. Sankhya permeated with the ideas and methods of yoga, which was not the case in Sankhya at all. Sankhya was actually renunciation from action and observing and finding that witness self without being involved too much in activities. And in another session, we discussed this, why it was necessary to do so, because karmendriyas are involving our jnanendriyas very deeply, and we cannot really have that connection or contact with our inner self. We are lost in the actions of Prakriti. So for that purpose, Sankhya develop that philosophical approach where you view the Prakriti as Prakriti is doing everything. By the way, that is the Sankhya's Jnana Yoga's approach. Yeah, Prakriti, gunas rotating in gunas. So that's what the major view of Sankhya. And you just start observing it. Don't involve yourself into the activities. And by that sannyasa, that renunciation, you slowly find the unborn self in you, witness. But yoga is doing it a bit differently. Yoga is involved in activities. It's very active, but renouncing the desire for the satisfaction of the senses, karmendriyas, jnanendriyas. And jnanendriyas becoming free within the activities, they are reorienting themselves towards the spirit from which they came. And that is another method. And these two methods are complementary in the mind of the Gita, of Sri Krishna. So, as what he says, increasing emphasis permeated with the ideas of methods of yoga. The practical difference, as it seems to have presented itself to the religious minds of that day, lay first in this, that Sankhya proceeded by knowledge and through the yoga of the intelligence. That's Jnana Yoga, the third khandha. While yoga proceeded by works in the transformation of the active consciousness. And secondly, that Sankhya led to entire passivity and renunciation of works, sannyasa, while yoga held to be quite sufficient the inner renunciation of desire and not of works. The purification of the subjective principle which leads to action and turning of works Godwards, towards the divine existence and towards liberation. Yet both had the same aim. And here that's what the question was from Radhe, the transcendence of birth and of this terrestrial existence and the union of the human soul with the highest. This at least is the difference as it is presented to us by the Gita. I'm not sure whether it is clear to you. It takes time really to figure out the difference. One has to try both methods in order to really know it a bit by experience. It's not enough to know it by the mind. Conceptual difference is not enough.
Vladimir,
Yes.
I hate to ask a question so early, but it
Yeah, please
seems
go
like
ahead.
it would take desire to want to renounce desire.
Right. Yes, it's like Buddhistic method. Yes, you have to have one desire to be liberated, to get into nirvana, and then before you go into nirvana, you drop that desire also, and then you are there. So first, with that desire to be liberated, you remove all the obstacles, and then you drop the last desire, and then you are there. Well, that is another method. Yes, desire. What is desire? Desire is an interesting thing. It is something inbuilt within our jnanendriyas, the senses of knowledge, those indriyas which are attached to the object of sense and want to get their self-satisfaction out of it. You know? They are looking for the delight in everything they perceive, the delight of the Purusha. They are searching for the delight of the Purusha in this manifestation in Prakriti, and that's why they're they got involved, and they cannot really easily liberate themselves out of this. Yes. Into what they stepped into, how to call it, engagement. So they got engaged with Prakriti. Now they want to get out of that engagement, and they can't, because they're looking for the truth there where it cannot be found easily. It can be only through transformation and through a constant application of the spirit to material activity, which is in the Veda known as the sacrifice. We have to invoke the deeper consciousness, higher consciousness in us, and through these jnanendriyas apply that light to our everyday activities. And we are not doing that. We are looking for liberation. We want to observe everything and see how Prakriti is doing things and get out of it, so to say. That is Sankhya. And yoga is doing it differently. It is saying that, no, you don't need to get out of the activities. You should be active, but you have to renounce only the desire of self-satisfaction of these jnanendriyas. And that is proper tyaga, proper sannyasa. And that is there where they come together. Sannyasa of Sankhya and yoga of karma yoga. And that's what he says here. Yet both, yeah, okay. Arjuna is perplexed as we are perplexed by this explanation, and asks, if thou holdest the intelligence to be greater than works, and that's what we already read, or we didn't read it, I will read it today. Why then dost thou appoint me to a terrible work? Why do you want me to fight? If intelligence is buddhi yoga, is all what is to be done, if I have to find my unborn self, why do I have to really go and fight? Thou seemest to bewilder my intelligence with a confused and mingled speech. Vyamishreneva vakyena buddhim mohaya siva me. I remember by heart that line. Tell me then decisively that one thing by which I may attain to my soul's will. Tell me one, ekam, yanashreyoham apnuyam. Tell me one thing by which I will attain to the highest good. And Sri Krishna tells him to fight, and he doesn't really understand why. In answer, Krishna affirms that the Sankhya goes by knowledge and renunciation, the yoga by works. But the real renunciation is impossible without yoga. Now look how he bends it slowly, because it's just conceptual difference. It's not real. When we start practicing, we will see that without activity with renunciation, we cannot arrive at renunciation at all. So, but the real renunciation is impossible without yoga, without works done as a sacrifice, done with equality and without desire of the fruit, with the perception that it is nature which does the action and not the soul. How could we liberate ourselves if we do not see that the nature does everything at all, within us and without us, through us, as it were? And there is someone in us who is not engaged. How else would we find the one who is not engaged? But immediately afterwards he declares the sacrifice of work and knowledge. Sacrifice of knowledge, we have to look into that term. Jnana yajna is an important term. Is the highest. All works find its consummation in knowledge. Sarvam jnanam, sarvam khalu idam karma jnane parisamapyate. All this karma, all the activities are summed up or end up in the realization of knowledge experience. So we do activities for the sake of that knowledge and not for the sake of the activities. So, and that is also the translation, and by the fire of knowledge, all works are burnt up. Therefore, by yoga, works are renounced and their bondage overcome for the man who is in possession of his self. Again, Arjuna is perplexed. Here are desireless works, the principle of yoga, and renunciation of works, the principle of Sankhya, put together side by side as if part of one method, yet there is no evident reconciliation between them. So on one side, we have here desireless works, the principle of yoga, and renunciation of works, the principle of Sankhya. Renunciation of desire and renunciation of activity. These two different principles. He cannot reconcile. We cannot reconcile. Our mind does not work in that direction. The mind is too weak to really do that. For the kind of reconciliation, this is an important, this italic, for the kind of reconciliation which the teacher has already given in outward inaction to see action still persisting, now this word still persisting is important, and in apparent action to see a real inaction, since the soul has renounced its illusion of the worker and given up works into the hands of the master of the sacrifice. This is Sri Aurobindo actually. It's not in the Gita, but this is very important addition. Is for the practical mind of Arjuna too slight, too subtle, and expressed almost in riddling words. Now, I want to go through this paragraph again. For the kind of reconciliation which the teacher has already given, in outward inaction, to see action still persisting. What does it mean? In outward inaction, when we are inactive, we see that in our inaction, there is action still persisting. Our inaction is not really inaction, it's an action of some kind. We cannot be inactive. It's impossible. That's what he wants to say. We can discover that in our inaction, so-called, there is an activity going on of a particular guna, of tamasic guna maybe. We are sleeping, or we are dreaming, or we are resting, or we are sitting, or we are lying down, but we are lying down. We are not standing, we are lying. This is the action of prakriti. It is taking place, still persisting. And in apparent action, to see a real inaction. Whatever is being acted through us is done by Prakriti. We are not really involved. The spirit is viewing that activity of Prakriti done through us. I know, it's like a deja vu of some kind. It's like a split of personality of some kind. Until consciousness is ready to see it. And there is one important here passage, which would be the last in this, what I would like to highlight today. The status which is attained by Sankhya, to that the man of the yoga also arrive. Who sees Sankhya and Yoga as one, he sees. This is a translation of the text, what we will be reading today. But renunciation is difficult to attain without yoga. As Sri Krishna would say, in order to attain, to come to inaction, inactivity, you have to do something. You can't arrive at inactivity without doing anything. So this yoga is needed to arrive at that state. But renunciation is difficult to attain without yoga. That's what he means. The sage who has yoga attains soon to the Brahman. His self becomes the self of all existences, of all things that have become. And even though he does works, he is not involved in them. He knows that the actions are not his, but nature's. And by that very knowledge, he is free. He has renounced works, does no actions, though actions are done through him. He becomes the self, the Brahman, Brahma Bhuta. He sees all existences as becomings Bhutani. And that self-existent being, his own only one of them, all their actions as only the development of cosmic nature working through their individual nature, and his own actions also as a part of the same cosmic activity. And this is the most important passage in this, the last one. This is not the whole teaching of the Veda. For as yet there is only the idea of the immutable self, or Purusha, only the witness self, the Akshara Brahman, and of nature, Prakriti, as that which is responsible for the cosmos, and not yet the idea clearly expressed of the Ishvara, the Purushottama, which will come later in the chapter 9 and later. As yet, only the synthesis of works and knowledge, and not yet, in spite of certain hints, the introduction of the supreme element of devotion, which becomes so important afterwards. The heart, the psychic being. That's what Radha was asking about. As yet, only the one inactive Purusha and the lower Prakriti, inactive Purusha witness and lower Prakriti, which Purusha witnesses, as Sankhya is declaring it. And not yet the distinction of the triple Purusha, of the Akshara, Kshara, and Purushottama, and the double Prakriti. And the double Prakriti is Para and Apara Prakriti. Not yet. This knowledge we do not have yet. And this is the distinction. And now I will stop. And if you have some questions, if you have any ideas about what we are talking about, then please go ahead. And otherwise, we will go to the text and see how it is being expressed in the original text. I mean, in the Gita.
So we have at this point, Vladimir, the concepts of action and knowledge, it seems like.
Right.
Yeah. And then we're going to add wisdom next in a couple of, okay. We're mostly on action and knowledge, it seems like right now.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Action and knowledge. Okay.
That knowledge is jnana yoga, right? That is the wisdom. So we've covered both action works in a certain way, not in the full way of the Gita, but karma and jnana yoga, correct? So what's missing now is the bhakti yoga.
Bhakti and jnana, which is not that type of jnana as Sankhya proposes. Yeah, it
Right.
is more jnana which is becoming the second step and incorporates karma yoga into it. Yes.
Well, even the karma yoga of yoga isn't the real karma yoga of the Gita.
Not yet. Yes. It's a foundation which is laid out for us to see this duality of us either being active and losing the spirit, or becoming inactive, getting the spirit and losing action. But where is that kind of ground where they come together? Is there a bridge possible? And the bridge will become karma yoga, yes. And he's already aiming at it. Yeah? He's already declaring that neither of these are actually existing separately from each other. That's just a matter of concept. It's a conceptual difference. It's how we see it. We separated spirit and matter in our minds for so long, and we are so used to it. It's our mental separation. In reality, it's not like that. You cannot achieve and realize well, he says you can by both of these methods. You can arrive at liberation, yes. But it is an illusion of some kind that you would not follow yoga when you will do Sankhya, or you will follow only yoga without the help of Sankhya. It's not possible. Yeah? You have both of them in both ways. They are present there. Only we do not emphasize them. We emphasize conceptually only one particular method, and we think we are doing that. Yes? But it is not true. Practically, we do both, and it is much more effective in a way. And I understand what he wants to say now more and more, that truly speaking, practically it's impossible to do nothing. We will do many things to arrive at non-doing. The one who sees in action non-action, and one who sees in non-action action, he truly sees. Yeah? This is something to look into. It's not possible to be inactive and to arrive at unborn self. It doesn't work that way. It's only a concept, a mental idea. But in reality, you will have to do a lot, which is not from this concept. Yes, Naomi.
I was just looking for it in chapter 5, when Krishna is talking about um, abandonment of action and selfless action. Is it really about the doing, or is it about the person who is doing the doing? That it, because he says that selfless action is better than the abandonment of action.
Yeah.
So, like this synthesis of these kind of dual aspects that are inherent in a being, it would seem like that the mind's control over what they think they're doing is more to the point of than just saying, well, if you're sitting, so you are doing something, because it's impossible to be in a state of not doing.
Yeah,
And
it depends
function
what your
in the world.
consciousness is doing in that moment. Yes. If you're sitting, what is happening to how you consider yourself? Yeah. So that's if you start judging yourself, oh, I'm inactive, I have to do something, or you're judging yourself, oh, I'm inactive, very nice, so let me. So it depends how you view it. If you have that witness, of course, then sitting or walking or doing something is actually should be the same to you. No, Naomi.
I think so. It seems that the yeah, the not doing isn't to be in a catatonic state. Otherwise, we wouldn't have taken birth,
Right.
right? That the doing or the not doing is more of like, maybe doing is manipulating. Maybe it's substitution of the word doing could be manipulating. And when we're in a state of fear, we're always trying to manipulate the actions in order to achieve an outcome. But when we exist in a state of love, then all action is pretty effortless, and we're the constant receiver of grace. But the attachment to a particular outcome is really never there. It's like being a mother. It's you wipe the snot off the nose because there's snot on the nose, not because you have this grand idea that you're going to wipe the snot in this one way and suddenly your child is going to be enlightened. That it's a practical thing. You have to change a diaper, or but it's done out of love and it's not tiring. But when we're trying to manipulate the outcome, then there's exhaustion, because there's so much kind of internal processing that is sort of trying to manipulate the waves of the doing.
Very nice what you describe. Yeah, so this is attachment to the fruit of action. Yeah, see, I have to get that result, so I had to put all the activities in a particular perspective. I have to anticipate the reactions of others, and I put them into this mosaic of action, and already the whole strategy and tactics all is put in place, and I'm getting where I want to get. Yeah, so here we are. Yes, absolutely.
So,
And that's what he says to get out of. Yeah. Yes, somebody.
yeah, but there is a way, like if you find the right work, right, that you can still love your work and what you do without being attached to the outcome, right? There's another way. It's not always just like flat, but you can still be joyful in your work if you're not attached to the outcome.
Yeah, I agree. And attachment to the outcome is actually it's a psychological bondage. Yes, again, we are coming to the same story that it's not really that you should not have the aim of action, or some kind of an objective, so the discipline or where you are heading at. You have to see it, yes, where it leads you. You have to only release that kind of sense of being everywhere engaged and responsible for every turn of the events, because everything is in your hands, and you have to how to call it, to be responsible for everything what is happening, psychologically responsible, not in terms of action. In terms of action, you are responsible. Yes, you have to write a letter, send it on time, everything you have to do. But psychologically, you don't have to be dominated by this kind of sense of being responsible and engaged. I do not know how to separate, but this is some kind of freedom, inner freedom. It's like you're doing it like in the movie or something, like in the theater. Today we discussed, in our other class on the Vedas, that we have someone who is from the theater, the director of the theater. So it's like you're doing it, you're playing the role of some kind, and it's very fun. It's a lot of joy. It's very interesting. But still, there's someone in you who knows that it is all only a game till the end. Very beautiful game, very lovely. But someone in you always knows that it is just not totally serious. Nothing is totally serious here till the end. Because you are eternal being, because someone in you is that unborn self, who got engaged and involved to play these roles. And we observe how Prakriti is doing it, and it's very uniquely interesting because Prakriti organizes, we can step also into Jyotisha. Jyotisha is another organization by Prakriti, how to engage us in a specific way, and give us certain instruments of knowledge and means of expression. Not all of us have the same means of expression and tools, and we have different tools, and we try to play together, and it's quite interesting how it happens. Yes. Yeah. Oh, please unmute yourself. It is in the corner.
Oh, okay.
Yes, go
Now
ahead.
you can hear.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, actually, we've heard all the sages say that actually, even though we talk about inaction, we are always in action. Even just to be alive, to be upon earth is an action as itself. But I wanted to share with you a sentences that I've read once from a book. I don't know if you ever heard about the Talk with Angels, the sort of spirit that was coming during the Second World War to share a teaching. And he says something very interesting. It talks to me a lot. He was saying that before acting, shut yourself to the old, sanctify the moment. Precipitation is not the act. The act is the presence of eternity in time. I found it quite significant and meaningful. I don't know if you get that, but the act is the presence of eternity in time. Acting, of course, not only doing something outside as an outward movement, but the consciousness is an act. To be conscious, to be here and there is an act as itself, I'm sure. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's beautiful, yes. By the way, what you said, it's actually, if you look at our universe, you will see that nothing is here static, nothing stays, everything moves.
Absolutely.
And this is quite interesting because only thus and not otherwise, the spirit can endure here and stay, constantly changing the form. In the fluidity of forms, the spiritual presence, so to say, can endure. And if somewhere something will stop, I think the whole thing will collapse. It's not even possible because the spirit is infinite, and that infinity, how else would you express in time and space if not through constant change of form and movement of space? Look at these galaxies constantly moving, these planets rotating, all these cells, atoms, these electrons creating fields. Nothing stays statically, everything is constantly moving, and that's how spirit endures in matter. That's how it creates matter, actually. So how can we be without action here? It's impossible even to imagine that one can stay without action.
Absolutely.
So seeing in action, that means seeing the spirit within this activity, holding onto it. And opposite, seeing in the spirit, yes, in the inaction, action. This is what the seers would see.
Let me. There's a beautiful line in Sri Aurobindo's Savitri which seems to describe this situation of that we're not always aware of it, but it's all the time. And it's a new day begins, and he says the sacrifice of suffering and desire, earth offers to the immortal ecstasy, again beneath the eternal hand. And this seems to me to encompass that whole process, that there's nothing static, it's going on day after day.
Would you mind reading that one more time, Robert? I just had a little difficulty hearing some of the words.
Sacrifice of suffering and desire, earth offers to the immortal ecstasy, began again beneath the eternal hand.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. Right. So we have the text. I do not know whether you want to go to the text today or we stay with Sri Aurobindo's text, but I will project.
So I guess I have this question that we talked about a couple weeks ago. If everything is constantly changing, always in motion, then what was meant in this theory of Manvantaras, in which after destruction there is a period of rest? What is that? Is it Parley or Parleya?
Pralaya, yeah.
Yeah. What? So that period of rest, is that not, I guess even that is in time and space, because they do give a set number of years that parleya occurs. So there is still something in that rest and in that inaction.
I think it is rest for the manifestation, yes, but it is for the soul and envisioning and work, and a new plan is made in pralaya. It's a kind of, when we leave the body, it's like a reflection. Yeah. So what it's like individual is reincarnating, leaving the body, and then makes a new plan, a new vision, new involvement, and comes with another Veda or plan and engages again with nature. And again starts the process kind of from another angle, because infinity is also the darkness, or the inconscient is infinite, and there are so many possibilities to be engaged until it is worked out. So
Well, and it's happening
yes,
in.
yes, Mart.
You see this so much in the movements of the world and society. It's as if I felt when we had a shift here in, for example, in this country in politics, that we were only allowed to go so far down a certain path, and then we needed to sort of regroup and develop some stability, because we cannot evolve without some stable platform from which to live our lives. And so there's constant change, but then there are periods of greater stability and rest. And it's very compassionate, I think, of the divine to lead us on in this way, because we can only take so much, at a certain time, and we all have our limitations psychologically, personally, and as societies and the world as a whole. So seeing these cycles of rapid change and then the phases of integration, it's just quite wonderful, I think.
Yeah, interesting thought. Yeah, to see compassion in the action of dealing with us, not capable of knowing much. Yes, so how to really evolve out of it and into the higher knowledge and higher harmony. Of course, certain stages of disharmony will take place, and some dangerous steps will be made, and some learning experiences will be also. You know, we have to learn from our mistakes. Mistakes are very important. We have to fall many times to rise with new strength and so on. So all this is taking place, but it is done very mercifully. But it wasn't done so mercifully in the 20th century, actually. Yeah, the Second World War was quite a disastrous one. Um, that was the war of the mother and Sri Aurobindo, as we call them. They came down and brought down this new possibility of humanity, and it was too much for humanity to. The resistance was too huge, yeah, and so the war took place.
The words that come to mind for me are, I'll try to maybe share on them this week, but I've been trying to distinguish between empathy and compassion. And I think that's what I heard Mirth maybe just saying. I'm trying to relate to it. I can't go around feeling everything. Or empathy is too many complications, but compassion seems to be able to hold in a witness state and see it without taking too much of it on. So it's a different subject, maybe different words, but
Very nice, very nice.
I'm
I
trying to relate to
understand
that.
what you mean. Yes.
Yeah. Especially
Yes.
as meditators.
Yeah, it's a spiritual state in which you can identify with others easily without specially being identified with them in a particular. And by the way, these compassionate people, such as Jesus, for example, he had that love, real love towards others. Yeah, was considered to be quite cruel and merciless by others because he didn't identify with their desires, with their preferences. They really couldn't understand him easily. Even Peter, when he met him first time, he said, I can come to the house of anyone who is calling me. So why do you want me not to go there? Because he's your enemy and you don't want me to be his friend. So this idea that once I am, sympathizing with you, I will sympathize with all your friends, and all will hate all your enemies. This idea is a very narrow, vitalistic idea. But once you are compassionate in a way towards all the beings, all creatures, all beings should be happy, as in mantras it is said, then you can really identify the true need in every being and support them in their true needs, not in their false needs and desires, which is very different. And people usually look at it as some kind of cruelty or some kind of cold attitude, that you are not really warm towards me. You don't love me, so to say. Don't love my desires, my preferences. I've seen this in my life many times, and I was wondering why people react so strongly. And I think even because of that, Jesus was crucified in a way. because he was not really understood by those, or what he really brought. Yeah? I'm speaking kind of mythical now language. It's not important, but still, it's something from the past. I was always thinking, how come that person who loves everyone could be so misunderstood? And so it is about your question, Bill, exactly what you said, that empathy and compassion, there's two different approaches. One is more holistic and truer and embracing the whole world and everyone in it. And the other is selecting only your friends against everybody else. My family is closer to me than those. I never could understand these movies when you see that someone is fighting for his family and kills others mercilessly. I can't understand coming home and then loving his children, loving his wife, and just before he killed someone. I don't, doesn't come together, doesn't make sense. All right, we have the text. If you want to look into it, I do not know, we have few minutes. 10 minutes. We can proceed a bit about what we were talking. Buddhi yukto jahatiha. Let us start with 49. Durena yavaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya. Buddhau sharanamanvicha kripanav palahetavah. Now look how interestingly Krishna intervenes the yoga into Buddhi yoga. He affirms that Buddhi yoga is better. So Durena Yavaram Karma, much farther, much better than karma is Buddhi yoga. So the karma is lower than Buddhi yoga. Or let us say Buddhi yoga is better than just karma. Buddha Sharanamanvicha, establish or seek the refuge in Buddhi, in higher reason, in higher mind. Kripanav Palahetavah, because those who are seeking only the fruit of action are actually miserable ones. Kripana. Works are far inferior to yoga of the intelligence, or Dhananjaya. Desire rather refuge in the intelligence. Poor and wretched souls are they who make the fruit of their works the object of their thoughts and activities. Look how beautifully he intervenes. The two, already he starts doing it. He's not leaving one Buddhi yoga against karma yoga. He already speaks that synthetic mind. Buddhi yuktah jahatiha ubhe sukrita dushkrite tasmad yogaya yujyasva yogah karma sukaushalam. One whose intelligence has attained to unity casts away even here in this world the dualities, both good doing and evil doing. Therefore strive to be in yoga. Yoga is skill in works. So buddhi yuktah, the one who is yoked, united with the higher mind, that compassionate mind which is seeing the oneness in the world. Jahatiha, lives here, ubhe, both, sukrita, well done, and dushkrita, and badly done, or good doing and evil doing. Tasmad yogaya yujyasva, therefore yoke yourself for the sake of yoga. Yogah karma sukaushalam. Because yoga is the skillfulness or skill in works. Now, what does it mean the yoga is skill in works? Skill. It reminds us something of the dynamic truth of the Veda, that the truth can reveal itself through dynamic nature, through activities. It can shine through. It can have some meaning in the activities. Yes, somebody is switched on, wants to say something. No? I hear.
Yes.
Yes, please go ahead.
We know that yoga means union. So when
Yeah.
they say yoga is skill in work, it means that that consciousness of unity is skill in work, is the ability to approach and do whatever we do in the right and the proper way. That's why yoga is skill in work, because unified consciousness is skill in whatever we're doing. Voilà.
Yeah, yeah. And look, in this verse, he uses 3 times root yuj. Tasmat yogaya, for the yoga, yujyasva. Yujyasva, yoke, unite. Unite yourself for the sake of yoga, because yoga is the skillfulness.
Exactly.
Unite yourself. Yeah. Yes, Naomi.
Is it possible also, I'm kind of fixed on this idea of skill, and it's like playing the piano. If you don't know how to play the piano and you're plucking out the notes, you might hit them all, but you won't play music. And once you understand the notes and the music, or really any craft, you know how to use the tool, then there's this kind of stream that you enter in, kind of using whatever the tool is to produce this music. I mean, if you're going to use the piano, then you use the piano to express this sort of profound idea that that piece of music is the only way that you can, express it in that moment. Or by singing bhajan, like the sound that comes forward, it can only be expressed in this way because you have learned, the technique of singing and breathing and the words, and you know that you can always go back to that root sound, when you've come back into yourself. Or writing, or even accounting, just whatever the task is, that there's a certain know-how that creates the foundation for you to sort of lose your material self and just delve into this kind of undescribable river, or this undescribable kind of way of being within it,
Yeah,
like a big capital It.
Yeah, beautiful. What I gather from what you say, and from this verse also, that union implies many more things than we really immediately see. Yeah? How to be composed, united with skills, with instruments. Instruments have to find their proper place, time, force, expression. Yes, that means fingers, reading notes, everything. This is one part. It's a physical part. Now, this physical part has to unite to the vital, mental, and deeper and spiritual part. When the spirit is there, when the mind is tuned to the spirit and vital to the mind, which is tuned to the spirit, and the body is the expression of all of these, then you will have a really skill in works. It's not just works anymore. It is a marvelous expression of the spirit, and that is what yoga is about. It's deeper than it looks, yeah? And it is possible, and we know it is possible. Once in a while we had those moments, those we cannot forget them, because then in that moment that alignment of all the levels of our being took place, and we had that marvelous moment of revelation that life can be beautiful. Life is beautiful. Remember the movie? Life is beautiful.
Vladimir,
Yes.
what Naomi talk was giving the example of music reminded me of the mother playing the organ. She said she got that coming to her from a higher consciousness. Then the action, her fingers, whatever she was doing, was a natural, spontaneous response to what was coming from a much higher level.
Yeah, Yeah, I also thought about Mother's music. Many people don't understand Mother's organ music because it is not by notes, it's not a composition. But if you listen carefully, you would feel that consciousness is present every time she presses the key. Every time she presses on the key, you feel it. It's a very tangible presence of consciousness. And that is something which is added to the music, which no other music has. I agree totally. But one has to have that tuning that we want to be present. That presence is there. It's not the music made out in the mind. It's not the music read by the notes. It is some kind of revelation, yeah, in that moment.
Yes, the act is the presence of eternity in time.
Right, right. And this is the best example, Mother's organ music, by the way. If we want to tune to that presence in time, we just have to listen how she presses those keys. By the way, for many musical people, it's quite difficult to listen to it because they are used to listen to the composition and used to listen to some kind of, harmonious in classical music and so on. And they're very judgmental about it. But not for those who want to tune to the deeper self.
You could say that more traditional music, classical music, is actually very mathematical.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that way, very mental, even though it has its spiritual components. And then Mother's music is completely from consciousness and from higher planes that are beyond mind.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. This mental aspect of music, of tradition, of specific school you belong to, it's the whole package is there. Yeah? So some great composers such as Bach, for example, were breaking those barriers. They were revolutionary in their way. Yeah? Or Beethoven, they heard something, but again, they had a culture around them, instruments which are restricting their expression, and the culture dogmas and so on and so forth. Yeah? But Mother is something else. It's every time I listen to her organ music, I can feel that consciousness in every note, coming up. Mm. It's a meditation. It cannot be heard like background music. You cannot listen to it in that way. You must concentrate, silence the mind. Then it will come. And there are compositions there. There are the developments of teams, and you are driven by her into higher and higher and more conscious state. It is happening. Yes, Naomi.
Just to kind of add on to that, there's a lot of indigenous music that all of the rhythm, like the nomadic horse tribes of Mongolia and Turkey, most of the music is stemming from what the horse sounds like riding. Like the horse creates the beat, and then the music comes out of telling a story of both what the rider is seeing, as well as the kind of history of that tribe's existence. Or like in the native cultures here, where the music is an expression that is like a ritual that is coming out of an action, like corn grinding song or stomp dance, that there's this whole embodiment of kind of compressing or crushing time onto itself, so that the whole sensory experience is happening in the song. The song is expressing, like, or ritualizing the whole experience of what is happening in that moment. And it carries its entire cultural storyline with it.
Right. This is interpretation. When we have a mother was actually playing music, which was coming to her, yes, which was kind of the moment she played one note, the other note is coming already. Huh? So it's not like she envisioned or she had a plan, or maybe some general plan to play for some time, yes, but everything is dictated by the consciousness which is there present. And in that sense, of course, interpretation, or that jazz, for example, all those, um, what do you call them, solos, and music can be created. And those indigenous cultures, they're actually creating the event. They're calling the music, and it comes to them, and it possesses them, and they feel being possessed together by that vibration and harmony. We actually experienced very similar things in Auroville when we had, Narad has his Om choir. And in that Om choir, many people felt that music coming down, and possessing everyone. And there is a moment where you're losing yourself totally. You don't hear your voice anymore. You just hear the voices, and you hear that something in you is making that move or that passage, which is adding to the whole. And you do not know who chose it even. You were not even choosing it. Something else chose it for you, and your voice was there doing it. And sometimes it was such a marvelous music. I regret that we didn't record. We did this similar with Aurelia, but in Aurelia's case, we were allowed to do different phrases, different sounds, not only Om, but any other. You can put the whole phrase or the whole line from Savitri into the music, and sing it as you like. We started with humming, sitting together, and then it was growing, growing, growing. And then you don't hear yourself. You hear everything else. And you are somewhere there lost. And at the end, and we are all with closed eyes sitting in the circle. And then when we open eyes at the end, when we finish, and the finishing of the music is also not predicted, not guided by anyone. It is felt that it is already coming to the end. It's unbelievable. I must tell you, these things, when they come down, they are like symphonies. There's higher music somewhere is waiting to come down through us if we are perceptive enough. So this union of instruments with the source, and that creates skillfulness in action. That's one line. Great. Let us stop here on this.
Vladimir,
Yes, Lakshman.
we talked about Narad, so he may have told that to you also. He said mother told him, create new music. And what you're describing here, Auroville thing, is just like once she decided she cannot play the piano anymore, she was creating that music through Sunil, who was not a musician by training. He was my biology teacher. But she created music through him. And what you're describing is like her creating music, new music, as everything you're describing, new music through the whole group.
Yeah. Sunil is profound. Yeah, if you listen to Sunil, I do not know. I would recommend everybody to listen to that music. Just put it and let it sound for you without specially listening. Just let it be for a while, and then it will be something. It will take you into.
Still her creation through him, just like the Narads and the Auroville music is all her creation. She wants to create a new music that bring a new consciousness through it.
Yeah.
And that's what you're seeing the beginnings of or growth of.
Right. Music actually is the most subtle in us, in consciousness, the easiest to to allow to modify our consciousness. Yeah, so it is the very subtle instrument. It's in a way, and voices and our expressions, and we start with humming and then we grow into symphonies. There were symphonies coming down, really most beautiful, marvelous music ever. Great. Thank you for today's session and everybody sharing. Thank you for this opportunity for us to come together and study Gita. I am closing with the mantra. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.